I do want to start with this budget because, there was a lot in there. And you can pick it apart. It basically leaves the overall budget the same, even though they talk about cuts. But, Chris, let me start with you. There was definitely language and a way of looking at spending in terms of taking it from the taxpayer and giving it to someone else that we don't really hear put that way quite often.
Absolutely. If conservatives were lukewarm or even upset about Trump Care and the health insurance plan and all that jazz, this is something that will make them stand up and cheer. This is the most conservative, conceptually conservative. I think you've nailed it. It's not about the dollars. It's about the concept of what the scope and role and appropriate place for the federal government is in American life. This is the most, by those standards, the most conservative budget ever put forward by a chief executive.
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about slashing programs 28, 30%. And, Richard, the argument that was made was, well, you know what? We don't have the money for all this stuff, folks. We just don't. So we need to figure out where it's going to come from. And I know you feel strongly that they're taking it from the wrong place, right?
I do think they're taking it from the wrong place. I think bolstering up our Defense Department when our Defense Department is pretty muscular as it is already is not the right move. But here's a silver lining in this cloud, Martha, for the audience at home. Trump says he's the guy who's the art of the deal, so maybe he's creating a budget that's absolutely, positively so toxic that he knows it's not going to get to the Hill and he can get something more like what he wants without much movement, right? So maybe that's it. But if not, I find this budget to be really, really heartrending for the seniors who depend on Meals on Wheels every day to get their dinner, or the kids that wake up and watch Sesame Street, or the African nations that depend upon the United States for they to be able to eat. And I think all those are zeroed out in this budget. And I think the one other point that I want to make here is I spent a month in Africa with foreign service officers who do the work of maintaining peace every day when our military isn't there. A 31% cut, or over a 30% cut to the State Department and our diplomacy, by far is one of the worst things that we can do in a world where
I hear you, but you know what? Let me bring in Charlie Hurd here. Interesting things happen when companies are told that they have to cut by 25%. They find places to spend less money and still get the stuff done in order to make some money, right?
The notion that a company could have a $20 trillion debt on their books and not have to cut things dramatically at every department is absolutely unheard of in the private sector. And so for Donald Trump to step in here and do that and to make these dramatic cuts, I think Chris is exactly right. It is the most conservative budget that certainly I've ever seen in my time in Washington, because politicians, they love to give stuff away, and it doesn't matter if it's their money or somebody else. In fact, actually, it does matter. They prefer it to be other people's money. They love to give it away, and they think that spending it on cartoons or shrimp jogging on treadmills or silent Shakespeare productions, they think that's a great expenditure.
Which are sometimes better than Audible ones, by the way. But no, I love Shakespeare. But I mean, this whole concept that it's wrong to take something from a single mother of two in the form of taxes, or a minor who is trying to put food on his table in order to give it to a program that is failing is, I think, somewhat a revolutionary thought. This is not the kind of language that we hear spoken in Washington every day.
Or not even failing. If it's you're just taking the money from that mother who has a single mother with a child in order to give it to some program that maybe it's a great program, it's still something that we ought to sit back and say, is this right?